Coogs House. The coaching search continues. We're still looking. And have we looked at all these guys from smaller schools?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston Morton teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That we can latest on the Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so good to see you again. Remember to subscribe. We're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. The next one to 1750. We are almost there. Hit subscribe. Help us get there. Like a comment, video, listen to the contest. If you've got no thoughts on these smaller school candidates, let us know in the comments down below if you like ice cream on top of your cake. I know people have it on top of pie, but do you like ice cream on top? Not ice cream cake. I see you. It's not the same thing. All right. Today's show, we're going to talk some about a couple of smaller school candidates that's names are making the rounds with the Houston football job after Dana Holgorsen was fired last weekend. A couple of smaller school names that I think people kind of know or have heard but don't really know. So we'll talk more about them. And in the last segment, I got to shed some love or spread some love to Houston Cougars winning some end of season awards in the Big 12. Just got to make sure. I mean, it's kind of a weird week. We're looking for transition in the program and like new, but got to make sure we give them some love as well. First and foremost, we're going to talk some about GJ Kinne, who is a hot commodity name. We'll talk about the pros and cons, everything in between. And then we're going to look at a guy from Vegas who would like to move to Houston, I'm sure, because Vegas is Vegas. Barry Odom. Barry Odom comes from UNLV. Talk about him as a candidate because people are kind of like, what? When it comes to that guy. And then again, like I said in the last segment, we'll talk about who won what in the Big 12 to end the season. So let's start with GJ. GJ Kinne, first of all, is originally from, I believe it was outside of Dallas, and was going to one high school, in Tyler, near Tyler, called Canton, right? He was there originally, and then there was a fairly tragic incident where his father was shot by a disgruntled parent of the team he was coaching. Yes, that's accurate. He's a football coach in this small town, and a upset parent shot him in the chest. So, and amidst all of that happening in his life, they moved to Gilmer, Texas. Now, Gilmer, Texas plays a role here because that would be, yes, Jeff Traylor at UTSA coaching at Gilmer High School. Connections. Now, at Gilmer, he would ultimately be a very, very strong quarterback, earning a scholarship to go play at UT Austin in 2007, then transferring to Tulsa in 2008, where he played several years for the Hurricanes, the Golden Canes, for the Hurricanes. Did not get drafted in 2012, but spent about a half a decade bouncing around the league and Canadian football, both as practice players, the longest stint of which was with Philadelphia from 2013, 2015, as a practice player the whole time, quarterback the whole time, offensive dude, quarterback, boom, 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 right? Since 2016, when he officially retired from football, I guess he'll probably tell you at some point whether that's his choice or not. He went and was a fairly quickly rising coach. He was a grad assistant at SMU in 2017. He was an offensive analyst at Arkansas in 2018. Philadelphia brought him back, and he'd been there for a long time as a player, as an offensive special projects coach, which I'm intrigued by. I like projects. In 2019, he went to Hawaii from there and was the OC and quarterback coach. Then he went from Hawaii to UCF and was the co-OC and quarterback coach there. That's the only lateral move, really, as I see it, in his entire thing. In UCF in 2021, again, as the co-OC, knew they were going to be moving into the Big 12 2 years later. And so it actually, you could argue, still a move forward. He went from there to being the head coach at Incarnate Word in 2022, and then went from there to Texas State last year in 2023. Now, I think it's worth pointing out that his head coaching record is 19-7. He has only been a head coach those 2 seasons, but at just 34 years old, he is a hot name in head coaching searches, especially in the state of Texas. Now, that's because he's got connections across the state. He did some work at SMU in Arkansas, would be recruiting in the northern part of the state at Incarnate Word and Texas State. He obviously is looking to get kids to the central portion of the state. And I think it bears, like, as a younger coach, it's worth mentioning that he still connects with a lot of these kids that are going to college, because you're seeing, frankly, a lot of this, I mean, generationally, they're not that far apart. He's a really strong recruiter because of that. I think the big thing that was a splashy thing from at Texas State was he pulled in a large number of transfer kids in his first class in the spring of 2023. And in doing that, he, what was my number here? I had the number written down. He had 18 Power 5 transfers. Not 18 transfers, 18 kids coming from Power 5 schools to play at Texas State, with the thought for most of them being to come back home to play in the state of Texas, right? Got things going in San Marcos and got a cultural thing going with that. I think that's a big selling point for GJ Kinne, right? The thought would be that you could do the same thing with Houston. All these kids that have left Houston, go play other places, you can bring them back and build a Houston program by Houstonians. I think that's a fair point. I think that's worth pointing out. However, I do think some of his success on the football field itself is getting over discussed, or maybe under discussed. Well, anyway, and Incarnate Word went 12-2, right? And that is a FCS team. They get to the FCS semifinals, like, D1 AA type stuff. Kudos to them. Incarnate Word is a program that, like, that's really, really good for, right? Like, that's in 1 year turnaround, that's a lot. Went to Texas State and then kicked off the year with a big win over Baylor in week 1 and got everyone paying attention, because it was kind of the story everywhere. Texas State knocks off Baylor. What's happening at Texas State? What is going on in San Marcos, right? And to be fair, that's an exciting year to kick off your season in a bye game, meaning that your bye week is Baylor is paying you to come play, and you go to Waco and beat them. That's a big deal. I would point out Houston did it too, but you didn't just kind of beat them. If anything, Texas State beat them more impressively than Houston did, with a 42-31 win in regulation. But then they turned around the very next week and lost to UTSA by a touchdown. Now UTSA is good. UTSA has been building this thing for a couple more years, and frankly, that is Kinne's former coach in Jeff Traylor coaching their side of the football field. There's some fun storylines there, but I could see how this big brother, little brother thing could be happening there, right? But they also lost to, like, Coastal Carolina. They lost badly to Arkansas State, who's good, but they lost badly to Arkansas State, right? They did beat South Alabama, the same South Alabama that beat Oklahoma State, so I guess you could tie some things in that circle. They beat Wyoming. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. They beat Nevada, and Nevada is a fairly strong program that only recently went to kind of the smaller level of football. In the early 2010s, they're really good at football. And I think you'd say, like, they had highs and lows. It's a roller coaster kind of season at Texas State. But we all heard of that big win over Baylor, saw the offense put up a ton of points and several wins this year, including 77 points in a win over Jackson State. They put up 50 points at Southern Miss, right? Like, this team put up points when they needed to. And it's like, okay, can we go get that guy? He gets the idea of bringing kids back. He builds cultures. The whole campus in San Marcos is rocking. What can we do? I just worry that we're really latching on to that he beat Baylor when we can look back in November and be like, Baylor was bad. Baylor was really bad. And if we can look back in November and say Baylor was bad, how does that shape that marquee win he had to start the season that he otherwise, it was a 7-5 season with a bunch of Power 5 fallback transfers. I don't know. I think it's worth pausing for. I think there's high upside. I think it's worth pausing for. One thing I will not pause for is when my ride or die vehicle, my car, needs help. I gotta get it fast. I can't wait for it. I go, Pat. If you have passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy? Those kind of things can keep your ride or die alive at eBay Motors. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. It's all the parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so I said that GJ Kinne had room for pause, and I think that the truth is that every coach has some room for pause, right? It's probably not fair to only qualify him as that kind of a guy. But one guy who's done the head coaching thing a little bit longer has actually spent a brief stint in the Power Five, that's now at UNLV, is Barry Odom. Now, we talked the other day about assistant coaches and his offensive coordinators got at UNLV because of how great a season they both had this year. But Barry Odom is also drawing looks for the Houston head coaching job because of how well his team played on both offense and defense in that 9-3 season that they had at UNLV. It's worth pointing out that immediately before UNLV, he was the assistant to the head coach and D coordinator at Arkansas. And immediately before that, he spent 4 seasons as the head coach at Missouri. As a Missouri alum, he had spent several seasons kind of working his way up with a brief stint at Memphis in 2012 to 14, as worked his way up like as a GA, director of recruiting, director of football ops, safeties coach, D coordinator, etc. His way up at Missouri. He did play linebacker at Missouri and is from Oklahoma, so he's familiar with recruiting grounds, but he's not a native Texan or anything. So similar area, not a Texan, right? Some people think that matters. I think it's a piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle, but digressing, too far away. Barry Odom, I think it's worth pointing, has that Power 5 head coaching experience from his time at Missouri, and I think it's like people are quick to point out, like, well, in his 4 years, they won 4 games, 7 games, 8 games, and 6 games. Something went wrong, But I'd point out first, Missouri's always struggled in this SEC thing. Their very first couple years were okay, and they've had a lot of struggles ever since. But I think the thing that doesn't get talked about fairly with Barry Odom is they took over Missouri in 2016 as they were getting major NCAA sanctions put on the program because they had kids straight up making up what classes they were taking, fraudulent classes happening at the Missouri campus. And while they ended up vacating the 4 wins they had in 2016, other sanctions that hit the program ultimately really hurt his coaching career there as well. And I don't know what it's like to have, built up this relationship with the program in place like it would have for him. He graduated from Missouri in 1999, and then like how that would tie into his, multiple jobs coaching there before coming back and getting the DC job, getting promoted to the head coaching job. But I do think that they knew when they were getting him in as the head coach, like, we need a Missouri guy that people will love. He's a very easy guy to like if you were trying to follow a program, right? And especially in a school that he's from, like Missouri. And I look at that to say that I know we're not Missouri. I know he's not from Houston or tied to UH any other way, but I do think that matters as we're trying to make sure, like, frankly, there were times it was like Dana was going to say it was on his mind, love it or hate it. I don't get that impression with Barry Odom at all. I don't mean to say that he's a liar or he's going around the truth. I think he's a lot easier to like kind of guy. He's not as ornery, that kind of stuff, right? I also think that as I watch Barry Odom, that those teams, because of the sanctions while he was at Missouri, were so much less talented than the teams he was playing week in, week out. They're in the SEC, right? And so yes, they 4 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, 6 wins, and that's not super impressive. but those are all uphill battle years. And so I think that, you can't just like hand him great success for those years either. I don't mean to say like anything like that, but putting grains of salt on that, I think, is important. And he has the small school immediate background. But again, with Missouri and Arkansas, he's got bigger school stuff in his past. Um, at UNLV, they ran a fairly explosive offense. I'd imagine part of the excitement here is that the young offensive coordinator of his, Brandon Marion, I imagine he'd bring him with him. And I think people are excited about the offense that Marion brings, but it's like he's a coordinator. What we do as head coach, he's super young. If you bring in Odom, you can also bring in that exact same offense because I'm sure, just like any head coach, are going to bring in staff of guys that they like. He did have 27 transfers into UNLV when he got there last spring. 7 of them were Power 5 guys, including several SEC guys that he just coached against the year prior. So I think he understands that aspect of it. I think the real trick here is that he's a defensive head coach that has coached good defenses. And so whether or not he can bring that offensive coordinator Marion with him, you've seen him coach defenses that like stand up in close games, whether that is, Colorado State, the same Colorado State that almost beat Colorado this year. They beat them by 2 points in a low scoring affair, right? They beat Vanderbilt earlier this season, had defensive stops down the stretch of the game when they needed it, right? They beat Hawaii this year and only gave up 20 points to Hawaii in that offense. They beat Wyoming this year, the same Wyoming that beat Texas Tech and gave Texas all they could handle. They beat them 34-14, right? You see kind of this like consistency of the defense making, when you like go back and like pull up the 3-minute clip of 3 more over in those games, the defense is making crucial stops at the end. The offense puts up points throughout. That's the mark of a team that I think people want Houston to be, obviously, right? Now, this weekend, he is coaching in the conference championship game. I should point out the Mountain West Conference Championship game. I almost slipped the tongue there. Mountain West Conference Championship game against Boise State. And so if they are talking to Barry Odom, they're probably not going to talk to him until after Saturday. But it's worth pointing out that I think there might at least be a phone call, depending on how other phone calls go for sure. And frankly, if he wins a conference championship over Boise State, he'll beat another good team and program. And he's a championship coach. Right now, I don't know what kind of bowl game that would land them in, but they are bowl eligible at 9-3. And frankly, as someone who's not playing a bowl game this year, I'm very, very jealous. I think Barry Odom would be a solid choice as head coach. Again, I think he's a guy that you're going to be pleased with in all of your post. Like, you're not going to get the explosive quotes and pressers post game. I think you're going to have like the visibly shift in defense to like, the goal is playing clutch defense at the right time, finding like the timeliness of making those stops at the end of games. And again, if he can pull in the offense with him and his offensive coordinator Marion, I think you'd get the same explosive offense that people are excited about across the country in that guy. And so I see this as a way to kind of have the best of all the worlds as far as promoting of small school guys. Now, I will say, before we move on to talking about the fun things that just got awarded to a bunch of former Houston Cougars, we do need to mention that in any small school guy moving up into the Power 5, moving up to Houston, right, there would be an adjustment period. I understand Kenny is a great coach. I understand that Odom is a great coach. There would be an adjustment period. And I wonder, would Houston Cougar fans be okay with the potential weight on that if they knew once things got settled, this is the right dude? I think there are a little bit more questions on Kenny as far as what that end product looks like, but there's also feels like a way more potential there. So it's kind of like, if you're going to pick one of these two smaller school guys, which one are you going to go with? Now, I did want to spend the third and final segment talking some about who won what awards this year for the Houston Cougars, but that's them winning. If you want to win this weekend, you need to go to Prize Picks, prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, because you can do all kinds of winning, putting your sports knowledge to the test. You think you know what's going on in the world of sports? Pick stuff across sports. Look at the combination parlays between NFL football and NBA basketball, and go look at the over-under for Travis Kelce receptions. LeBron James made 3, set at 10.5. So if Kelce gets 7 catches, LeBron makes 4 threes. Boom, you're hitting the over, and you knew it was going to happen. So you went to prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege and put something on it. That's awesome thing at prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege, in which they also will reboot injured players. That is, if your guy gets hurt in the first half and does not come back in the second half, they reboot your pick. You don't lose anything. You get to keep on going. They're the only daily fantasy sports app with that kind of injury insurance. Make sure you check them out at prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege. It's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. To give you a first time deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, get winning today. All right. I said in the third and final segment that I want to talk to them about the awards handed out today. Right now, I think it's interesting to look at all Big 12 conference awards as we lead into Big 12 conference championship weekend. Oklahoma State and Texas are playing. Houston, we're going to get there one day. But preseason, there were no Houston Cougars on the first team. And there were, I voted for plenty when I got to vote, I promise. But there were no Houston Cougars on the first team. And then at the end of the season, I told you there'd be someone on the end of the season. I had a couple options, and 2 of those options made it. I'm not going to go pull the dates, but you can go back and show the catalog. Houston ended up with 2 guys on the first team, all Big 12. Patrick Paul representing Houston at left tackle, and Nelson Caesar representing Houston as a pass rusher. Now, Nelson Caesar had a great year rushing the passer, obviously. Patrick Paul did his best to keep the quarterback clean, the offense chucking, and for what it's worth, I forget the exact number, some absurd amount of snaps without a penalty. He ultimately did have one in that final against UCF, but I actually think that was on the snap. But he went an absurd amount of snaps without a penalty at left tackle. Vital position. Now, that was not the only representation Houston had, as Houston was watching Big 12 awards roll out on Wednesday. Jamari Caldwell, pass rusher extraordinaire at 325 pounds. Yes, a 325-pound pass rusher from Sac Ave, was on the second team, all Big 12 conference. He was joined by Matthew Golden, who was also an honorable mention for Special Teams Player of the Year. Matthew Golden actually was on second team as a return specialist. I maintain if he'd gotten to play at the end of the season, he'd have at least been on the receiver and might have even been a first-team receiver. His season-end stats look a little, skewed because of that injury. But he was on the second team as a return specialist, so he did get the honor. Good to see Matt Golden win and take that home in a season that was so, I think there were just so many speed bumps and barriers along the way that he pushed through to get there. Jamari Caldwell stepped up. I should point out, I went too fast through that in a big kind of way when Houston really needed him with the Dot Nwankwo injury, and Nelson Caesar spent some time hurt and all that kind of really, really good to have him on the roster in those moments. As far as the honorable mentions go, there are a handful of other honorable mentions as well. AJ Halsey was an honorable mention safety and was also, for its worth, honorable mention for defensive newcomer of the year. Sam Brown was honorable mention at wide receiver. I don't think there are 6 wide receivers in the Big 12 Conference better than Sam Brown, but he was at least mentioned as an honorable mention. I guess we can come back and do more again. Some other points, Sammy. Isaiah Hamilton at corner was mentioned as a honorable mention, all Big 12 player as well. Turnover machine there for a period of stretch of football games. Isaiah Hamilton was. And Parker Jenkins was honorable mention running back and honorable mention offensive newcomer of the year. Give him the ball more. Give him the ball more. Honorable mention running back and honorable mention newcomer of the year on offense. So Houston had honorable mentions on both newcomers of the year. I think that's good for improving the roster, to say the least. And was ultimately represented by 8 players across all Big 12 teams. That's a big, big jump from the preseason where they had Cero. That's big time. That's big time. Credit to the guys and their hard work to shine through a season where Houston went just 4-8 and won just 2 Big 12 games. I think that's a good sign for the future for whoever comes in and fixes this program in the coming days and weeks. I think it'll be days at this point, folks, not weeks. But whoever comes in and picks up this program is getting really talented kids if we can keep them in the third ward, right? So I'm going to keep cheering them on. You're going to keep cheering them on. They wear red and white. Why not? Now, that's kids. Now, not all of them, I guess I should say. Like Patrick Paul is going pro. I imagine Nelson Caesar is shot at the pros as well. That's kids on campus. We want to keep on campus. And I say that because it did come out on Wednesday that Jamari Caldwell, they mentioned as an anonymous school. It's not that he's left or anything like that, but the kind of NIL money he would potentially net at a Big Ten school that he apparently did hear from. Reported first by Joseph Duarte was somewhere in the $500,000 range, right? So we get this coaching hire right. We can get our own NIL dollars right. We can keep, Brian Early has coached a lot of pros on the defensive line, and we can continue to keep those kinds of athletes and development happening. I think we can get this thing turned around pretty quickly, folks. I really, really do. One honor that's not directly tied to all that Big 12 stuff that did come out on Wednesday that I probably should have pointed out. We're going to hit it here at the end of the show before we go, is that David Gwegbu was mentioned and is going to get to go play in the East-West Shrine Bowl, representing Houston and Sac Avenue there. A good showing there could really get him an improved draft stock as a pass rusher, transition from linebacker at Oklahoma to pass rusher for Houston this year. And so I hope to see him play well at that Shrine Bowl. So go get that, Dave. Again, that's the Shrine Bowl. David Gwegbu is going to be representing Houston and Sac Ave. So go flip that on. I think it's going to be in late December. So go flip that on and check out David Gwegbu. Thank you all so much for tuning in today to Locked On Cougs for your first and maybe also potentially second listen today. We got 2 episodes out today. Make sure you go check out both. And if you're looking for another list, you just can't get enough, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake's doing a great job of doing all things across the conference, all the coaching hires, the not hires, the guys that need to be fired, etc. All happening at, there's also a conference championship game that's happening this weekend. All happening at Locked On Big 12. So go check that out. Thank you all again so much. Locked On Cougs, the private Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Cougs, every day. Go Cougs.